Okay, it's an election year. And no, we're not going to talk about politics on the podcast. Come on. But we are going to talk about how an election year can really create uncertainty in buyers and sellers. And what can we do about that? What can we do to calm fears and get people moved into the house they want to buy, sell the house they want to sell, and really do that with confidence? Let's dive in.
You're listening to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast, where we invite you to check your ego at the app, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready to dive into all things real estate marketing, social media, friendship, hardship, love, money mindset, and all the things that celebrate you as a badass boss babe.
We're here to encourage you, show up for you, give you a loving kick in the pants when you need it most, and be your soft place to land on the hardest of days. So pull up a seat at our table and get ready to be inspired and start living your best life by design.
Welcome to the Girl Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast. We are so excited you're here.
Okay, girls, let's dive in. All right, Bus Bench babes, I have a treat for you. We have Conor Hesch of Bell Bank Mortgage. He's back. So hi, Conor. Thanks for coming back.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
We didn't scare you off yet?
No. Looking forward to holding this record and growing the record.
Okay, so if you have been here for any amount of time, we've had Conor on the show twice. You can check out his past shows. Show number 83 was all about real estate investing for beginners. And then show number 145 was house hacking for beginners. So Conor is like the true OG house hacker. He owns many doors. If you are an investor, you know exactly what that means. And he like walks the walk and talks the talk. So we're really excited to have you here, and you really know your craft. And so that's why having this like really deep mortgage conversations is really fun.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to celebrating my 20th year as a mortgage advisor next July. Next July, 2025. Big party.
Well, so talk about, like, introduce yourself. So you're Conor Hesch, but like, what do you do when you're not selling mortgages and working with customers? Like, what do you do for fun?
I respond to emails and text messages for fun.
24 hours a day.
24 hours a day. Real estate's only speeding up. I'm just turned 40. Beth was at the party.
Yes, you had an epic party that was awesome.
And so, yeah, I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm a nerd for it. I do try to be a little bit better than the bankers of yesteryear, you know, that won't get out of their chair unless they see dollar signs. I believe in people first and relationships, and then the rest we'll figure out together.
Yeah.
And born and raised in Minnesota, and have a girlfriend and a dog. Terrible golf game, and I try to be around water as much as I can.
That sounds like a dating profile, except you're not on the market.
I should mention I am 6'1", though.
Okay, let's get into the show, you goofball. All right, we're diving right in. The whole reason why I want to have you on this podcast is that we are in an election year, and there can be a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace around like what's going to happen, what's like the political, and we're not talking, we aren't going to go down the rabbit hole of talking about specific parties, but we are going to talk about like what an election year could mean for real estate and mortgage industry. So let's just dive in. So let's chat about like what, Conor, like what has the mortgage landscape looked like this year overall so far in 2024?
I think this year's actually been really volatile, and it depends on how closely you're following the cycles. Sometimes these news articles come out and they're a bit behind. They're talking about something that happened 3-4 weeks ago. They're lagging
indicators.
Yeah. So there's lagging indicators that can kind of confuse people. But this has really been a sort of up and down year, meaning in some of the times we touched 8% for a rate. Mm-hmm. But then we also got down into the low sixes, and you could pay discount points to buy down your interest rate, and you could get a 5.9 rate. So to go from 8s to 6s, and then back to 7s, and then back to 6s, there's just been a lot of swings, and those swings are due to uncertainty. And I think you could expect a few more swings before the elections just because uncertainty is what's creating those. It's not necessarily one particular item that you can hang your hat on every time. I wish it was that simple of an economy where you could say if A plus B, it always equals C.
Right.
So just a lot of volatility. I think overall the average is about 7% right now. If you sum up the last year, yes, there's high sixes, yes, there's high sevens. So I think the result is about 7-ish. If you're looking for a ballpark, conversation with friends, seeing something while riding in your car, 7% is kind of where things are at.
What have you seen out there with like the real estate agents that you're working with? Like you are always out networking, like you're a mover shaker, like you know everybody in town. Like what are you seeing in terms of like real estate agents like and their business? Like what are you hearing word on the street? Lots
of complaints.
Like what?
I think uncertainty is that complaint. There's been all of the drama with the NAR settlements. Then there's interest rates. Then there's elections. I kind of miss when wearing a mask at a restaurant or not, or being able to get a haircut or not was our only concerns, back during the pandemic.
Right.
I hate to say it. Can't believe I've said I miss the pandemic. But I think uncertainty's in the air, and some people are waiting to sell their house because they want to see what's going to happen with elections. Other people said, who cares? I want to sell now. So I think these agents don't know whether to, switch their business models completely or just tread water and do the wait and see approach. Mm-hmm. And I think that's it. They're all positive. There's still people buying and selling houses. Other than uncertainty, it's really still a good time to do transactions. I don't think it's vastly different than before from one month to the other. It's just where you're focusing your energy. If you're focusing your energy on news, then the sky is always falling.
For sure.
If you're focusing your energy on your life and different opportunities and various deals and negotiating and things like that, you can still get what you want.
Right. I like when we're out and about and networking, I'm seeing like two camps this year. People like realtors and lenders that are having terrible years. They're like, oh my God, business is so terrible. It's like the worst I've had in forever. I hadn't had deals in months. And I see it even on like those internal Facebook pages that they're like, I need a deal right now or I'm not going to get my mortgage paid. And then agents on the other side of that coin that are like, we're having the best year ever. Our team, I will personally probably have the best year I've ever had in my entire life this year. So it's so weird. That's
phenomenal. Congratulations.
Well, I mean, thank you. But we're working the business. We're like not treating it any different. We're like head down, doing the business, like making the connections. Like we're mixing old school with new school, and we're still serving clients at a high level. I'm like, it doesn't matter what's happening in the economy. My mortgage payment still needs to get paid, and I still love clients.
Yes.
So
yes, yeah. And that's kind of what I'm experiencing as well. We actually even had to hire a new person onto the team.
Right. That was so exciting to hear you say that.
So it's also nice to hear from someone like you who's very real and authentic that that's what you're having, and not just another sort of Instagram guru or influencer coach.
Yeah.
Where they just drink positivity and piss motivation. And so when I hear real people like you having that success, then that's awesome. And I love that. And you get out what you put in despite the weather.
Right. Well, and it's so nice to just still be serving clients. Like, that's what I'm here for. That's what you're here for. Like, that's why we became friends. Like, we love to serve the client.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, okay. So let's talk about, like, have you seen any changes with clients? Have you seen, like, outside of, like, uncertainty, are you seeing, like, big changes? Are they asking you different questions this year than what you've seen the last couple of years?
Definitely, we get into more budgetary talks,
okay.
Monetary policy, and tips and tricks to reducing payments. Often, they want to find a way to get that payment lower, and then we realize, wait a minute, why don't you just pay off those 3 credit cards and the car loan instead?
Yeah.
With some of the loan level pricing adjustments changing, the big delta between doing very little money down and doing a ton of money down, the interest rate isn't that different. It's not that much better. Whereas if you pay off a car loan or pay off a credit card, you'll see a bigger shift in your monthly budget. I will say a trend I'm noticing is lower purchase prices and lower loan amounts. And let's break those down real quick.
Yeah.
When I say lower purchase prices,
Especially because affordability is a big deal. Yes.
Yes, exactly. This is based on affordability, not inventory or not the market. Meaning, anytime I see a trend with the purchase prices going down, a panic sort of knee-jerk reaction could be, oh, our house is losing value? Is my house going down? Is this a recession? No, this is not 2008.
Yes.
What's happening is these higher interest rates are forcing consumers to be a little bit more mindful about what they're buying and rein in some of their spending. And we'll kind of touch on that, I'm sure, later in this episode with inflation and the Fed and rates. But essentially, these higher price points are making people be a little more cautious with how much they're going to buy. Mm-hmm. And then there are a lot of cash deals and a lot of family money coming out of the woodwork.
Totally. Half of our deals are that.
Yeah. And so maybe if rates were a little bit lower, you'd see a young couple buying a home and they would say they want to buy a house around $400,000. But you know what? They end up buying something that's $490,000.
Right.
And they'll do 5% down. Whereas now they say they want to buy a $400,000 house and maybe they end up at $350,000 and family gave them enough money to do 20% down.
Wow. Yeah.
Which is interesting to me because that same family, those older parents that are gifting these large sums of cash to help their kids, I'm almost surprised that they are because their kids are very worried about this 6.5%-7% interest rate. Mm-hmm. But their generation had 11, 14, and 18% interest rates. So in talks with these parents, some of these parents have said, 7's nothing, you're lucky.
Right.
Because, the millennials and the Gen Zers don't have a longitudinal view. They just know what they've experienced so far.
Yep.
And then you've got other parents that are like, oh my gosh, yes, that's terrible, let me help. So I think it all stems from affordability. Regardless of interest rate, if your son or daughter or whoever is struggling with that monthly payment and you want to help, I think there's a lot of parents that say, you know what, I was going to give this to you when I die, but instead, let me help you now. Mm-hmm. And so purchase prices are lower while home values are still soaring.
Right.
Home values are still going up. The purchase prices of the loans that I'm seeing are lower because these people are being a little bit more careful, mindful.
But they can qualify for way more than they're comfortable spending every month, is what I'm seeing a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think that's been the case for a long time, is like, okay, you can afford to buy a $500,000 house, but then when they look at the monthly payment, they're like, no, we're not going to do that. Even though
they can.
They're just choosing not to.
I very frequently pre-approve people to $750,000 to $1 million, and then they buy something that's $512,000.
Isn't that weird?
And so
it's good though from a conservative, that maybe that's like the conservative kind of roots that we have here in Minnesota.
And I think that's literally what the government wants people to do, is
max it out at $1 million.
No.
Oh.
But by the way, if you're buying $1 million and up, this is a great time to call Beth and everyone over at the BPR team. But,
yeah, heck yeah.
In any case, so I think people are being a little more careful, and then families chipping in money. Mm-hmm. And then when rates do lower, we'll see another refi boom. We might even see people struggling with debt and trying to move some money around because of previous spending habits and credit card balances. And so there's a lot of pent-up demand for low rates and things like that. And I think there's even talk of some people saying that they'll do a refinance if rates are low and repay family.
Well, so we've had two situations this year where couples, move up buyers. So like we sold them their first house and then now they're married and having kids and they want to buy a bigger house. And parents have just said, we're going to gift you the money to pay cash for a house. So then you can be non-contingent when you're buying this new house and you don't have to sell your old house yet and move over slowly. And then they have some sort of a payment arrangement with the parents. So the parents will just lend them the money at like 5% or whatever. And I'm like, well, I mean, that's incredible. I didn't have that kind of silver spoon growing up, but
yeah, it would have been nice.
Pretty cool that parents are like, then their parents get to see the kids enjoy, this new house and, starting families and whatnot. So that's kind of an interesting trend that I've seen that I haven't really seen that until this year.
And I think some of that is with the people living longer.
Yeah.
And with the stock market improving, it wasn't doing so hot at first. Stocks were down several years prior. I think these parents don't feel they need that money urgently.
Right.
Now, if stocks were soaring and if they were closer to nearing end of life and heavy medical bills and expenses, I think these parents would say, sorry, I need my cash. I need my money for things. But I think a lot of these parents in their 60s and 70s are saying, hey, I'm not near my end of life. I can give this money. But, last week we had all three major markets, NASDAQ, Dow Jones, and the S&P close up. Things are moving up in the stock market. So maybe if they see more gains in the stock market, they'll say, wait a minute, I can't take the money out it's earning. I think if it's flat, they say, yeah, here you go. I might as well help my kid. The money isn't doing too much. But when it's booming, they say, I need to leave it in there.
Right. Or could be making way more money.
Right. Or if they're older, they say. So I think there's some of it is just emotional decisions and some is market driven.
Yeah, I love that. So we're in an election year, 2024, and like full disclosure, we're not getting into politics on the podcast, but we are going to talk about like how election years can impact like real estate and mortgages. So like, Conor, what are you seeing like with upcoming election? Like, what do you think that's going to do to impact interest rates between now and the end of the year?
That is the $1 million question.
I know. Like, we all need a crystal ball.
Will rates go down? Or will they go up? I think everyone's focusing on rates going down just because that's what they want to see.
Right.
Small chance rates go up. Right now, the market makers and the gurus are predicting a potential for 2 rate cuts this year. Now, if those cuts happen, they would likely be September and then December. Those would likely be the 2 times they cut. My gut tells me they're only going to cut once, and my gut tells me they're not going to cut before the election.
Interesting. Why do you think that?
Well, the Federal Reserve, led by Chairman Powell, is supposed to be non-biased. They're supposed to be looking out for our well-being, and they're not supposed to just change with the who's ever in office at the time. So I think they're going to avoid a rate cut, a pre-election rate cut, to not look biased.
Okay.
Now, the Fed has a dual mandate. Okay, one is to promote maximum employment. So that means they want the unemployment rate between probably 3% and 4%. Right now it's sitting at around 4%. So they want to create jobs, right? Promote jobs, have maximum employment. And then they also want stable prices, the price of these consumer goods. They don't want a gallon of milk to cost $10.
Yeah.
So they want people employed and they want people to be able to afford things. That's really the Fed's job when they are keeping their hand over the spigot and controlling the flow of monetary goods and services and things to various banks and trying to keep this economy on the rails.
Right.
So while sometimes who's in office can kind of sway that and there can be different initiatives and things like that, they're not supposed to be tied to Democrat or Republican. So I think they're not going to give us a cut until after the election.
Okay.
Otherwise, it could be skewed as favoritism one way or the other.
Okay.
So if some people are still predicting 2 rate cuts, but we think that the Fed is hoping to remain apolitical, then that means 1 rate cut, which means maybe December. Okay, but what if it doesn't happen? Now, I mean, you blink the eye and it's already 2025.
I mean, the fact that we're
counting on December.
We're halfway to Christmas is pretty nuts.
Right. Especially because I think at one point the most sort of aggressive prediction I had heard last year was there'd be 6 rate cuts this year.
Right. And then we start getting into 2024 and you're like, why hasn't this happened yet? They're promising and, we're all hoping and praying for all these rate cuts. And then
where's my money? Where's my low interest rates?
Literally sellers that are living in homes that no longer serve them are not selling. Buyers are sitting on the sidelines waiting for rate cuts. And it's like, okay, everything's going to go bonkers when the rates do finally drop. But there's a lot of people sitting in holding patterns right now.
Yes. And the Federal Reserve has said higher for longer. They've said that. So I'm very cautious to remind people of that when people say things that maybe they heard at a friend's house or on a radio show, and they're like, "Yeah, well, it's going to be this low by this time." I say, "Well, remember, the Fed wants higher for longer unless they see some weakness in the job market. If unemployment spikes way up, or if suddenly no one spends any money and inflation goes down, then maybe they'll raise rates quicker, or lower rates quicker. So it's tough to slow this train down without it coming to a complete stop.
Yeah.
And they don't want our economy to come to a complete stop. So if things slow down too quickly, that's when they'll cut rates. But so far, they're getting what they want. People are reining in their spending. Recently, the personal consumption expenditure report came out, and that did show a decrease in spending. So that's usually what the Fed uses to track inflation.
People are feeling the pinch. I get that.
Yeah, we're feeling the pinch. We're spending less. We're buying a house for $400,000 instead of $600,000, or $500 instead of $590.
Yep.
So it's working, and I don't think they're going to take the brakes off right away.
Are you seeing a shift in buyers' behavior at all? Like outside of like maybe buying less of a house than they could afford? Like, are you seeing anything else that you're like, oh, that's an interesting thing that I hadn't paid attention to before?
I'm seeing more inspections. I think I think buyers are thinking, hey, if I got to pay more for the house, fine, but it better be a good house.
Yeah, I'm not going to buy a lemon if I don't have to.
Right.
I want to know what's going on.
And so even though there's not more homes for sale than before, inventory is still tight, right? Buyers are being pickier. And I think that's because the interest rates have rained on their parade a little bit. So if they're not getting their cake, they're making damn sure they get their ice cream. Yeah. And they're really, really looking deeper into these homes, which I think from an agent standpoint, you've always preached that anyways.
Yeah.
You don't want somebody to be unhappy the day after closing or the week after.
No. And I want everybody to be able to get an inspection. There's just some markets where it's like, how bad do you want the house? Mm-hmm. And I hate it, but I'm like, I'm going to present you with options and then you get to decide. But like, we are going to be like really looking at that house at the showing just to make sure that we're looking for any sort of weird nuances of the property. Because God forbid you buy a house and then something major happens and you're like, oh, great. Why did. And Beth sold us this house. And you're like, no.
It is strange to try to put your finger on it. And we as humans want one answer, one simple concept to sort of apply to everything. But it's still very nuanced on the markets. While I have some clients being able to negotiate a lower price on a home because it's been sitting for 30 days or 60 days, I have other clients that are offering $50,000 over the list price and not getting the home.
So way two huge extremes. And that's what I've told people that are asking. I'm like, the market's a little wonky in that some houses 15 offers and other houses that on paper you look at it, you're like, this house is awesome. Why has this house been on the market for 2 weeks? But then people get really weird and they're like, well, if it's been on the market for 2 weeks, there must be something wrong with it.
Yeah, it must have at least 10 dead bodies in the basement.
Right? A Dexter kill thing in the basement.
It's so funny how perception and timing.
Yes.
But a house could sit on the market for 2 weeks just because it happened to go live when good weather came to Minnesota, and then people are out and about enjoying their lives instead of fixating on real estate.
Right.
I think that's another thing is sometimes we're looking at these national statistics that are national stats. Mm-hmm. And if you want to get really niche, I suggest contacting Beth and her lovely team.
You're like my hype man. I love it. No, but there's like micro and macro, you got to really look at the nuances, and it's nuanced from like neighborhood to neighborhood in the Twin Cities too. Mm-hmm. So.
And I think also now that people are upset about interest rates or this or that, you've got to, if you're going to bring your home on for sale, make your home as sexy as possible.
Absolutely.
Get those pictures perfect. It's almost like online dating. It's all picture driven.
Yep.
And so you really need it to be cute. Otherwise, you might not get the offers you think you're going to get just because some people are completely on the sidelines with these interest rates. They either want to wait and see, that big whole thing.
Thank God. Yeah.
Or they're just not willing to boost their payment so high like they, I mean, it's affordability.
Well, it's weird though, because if you're doing a side-by-side comparison for all these buyers that are sitting on the fence, not taking action right now, waiting for a lower interest rate. Well, when interest rates have a 5 in front of them again, if and when we get to that time, the house that they're looking at today is going to be exponentially more expensive because it will be in multiple offers, and then the payments are going to be apples to apples. So why would you not get into a house today?
Yeah, and everyone and their mother is going to be out looking for a home if rates go into the fives.
It's going to be like COVID time again.
And if we get those 1 to 2 rate cuts later, even though when we talk cuts, we are talking about the Fed funds rate, which is an interest rate that the Fed will use to loan banks money. And so if banks can get cheap money, then they can loan it out cheaper. Just a side note there. So even though that doesn't directly impact mortgage rates, they all kind of ride the sea level together. So if rates come down, more people are going to act. More people are going to get off the fence. I think there's a lot of homeowners in the 2s and 3s that bought a $300,000, $400,000 house that now need more bedrooms.
Yep.
And they just can't rationalize buying a $600,000 house
at 7%.
Right, because they're doubling their sale price and they're doubling their rate.
Yeah.
And they just can't rationalize it, even though they qualify for it. So we do a lot of talking about, hey, let's make you a loan estimate based on current rates. Now let's make you one with lower rate, and also getting rid of your mortgage insurance because you can challenge that and have the PMI removed. And shout out to Camo, your best friend with PMI. That's a thing she's good at. So I really pepper in a lot of caution with these talks. I don't want to promise something I can't deliver.
Right.
And I think when rates first went up, and there was a lot of agents and loan people saying, oh, just buy anyways and refinance later. It was too soon. So it felt salesy, right? I think now that we've had higher rates for over a year or about a year, and we've not had any rate cuts yet, it's kind of making this rate cut more and more imminent.
We're hoping, right?
And so if I'm making a quote for somebody at 6.5% or 7% or 7.3, depending on which program they're using, let's say, or 7.8, it really depends whether we're doing down payment assistance or a condo or a single family or so on. But then I'm also going to make them an estimate that's at 6, and I'm going to make an estimate at 5.5. I'm not going to make an estimate in the 3s and 4s because I don't want to overpromise. I think it's very likely to end up in the middle 5s to low 6s here eventually. So then once they see that payment, that allows them to have that light bulb moment to say, oh, yeah, well, hey, if we are down there, I'm golden. Or, oh, hey, if we're there, I'm still uncomfortable. That's what we got to figure out.
Right. What's your pain point?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because if you're still uncomfortable at 5.1...
this might not be the time for you to do this.
Then you need to re-examine all of your priorities on home ownership.
For sure.
With your other debts. Or, you know what? Sometimes this is kind of kicked people in the butt to get up and do what they should have been doing anyways. Meaning, I had one client, when their offer's accepted, say, hey, this was the motivation I needed to go tell my boss I need a raise.
Yeah.
And she emailed me back on Monday, say, good news, I got a raise.
Yay!
Because it had been 2 years without anything, and she's a really hard worker. And so she's like, yeah, he, boss, I don't know, was he or she? Was like, absolutely, yes.
That's awesome.
It wasn't even a scary conversation.
Right.
So I think saving money, or maybe just not, you don't necessarily have to save it, but just spend a little less, go out and get paid, right? Pick up a side hustle or tell your boss you deserve that raise. And then understand what the options are for home ownership, because you're right, Beth. When rates do drop, it's going to have ridiculous competition.
A bloodbath.
And then you're going to be overpaying, and you're going to be waiving your inspection, and you're going to be doing an appraisal guarantee.
Yeah. All of those things that people I just get nervous to do. And it's like, well, you're going to have to give up a firstborn if you want a house when rates are in the 5s again. Because we're not just magically going to be able to snap our fingers and have that much more inventory on the market. We've been in an inventory shortage spot for 10 years now. Yeah.
And this is going to be an adjustment period, because I know home builders can't build homes fast enough or cheap enough to keep up with demand. And so while we're in the midst of all these changes, I think a lot of people are like, oh, this is just bad weather, and soon it's going to be back to low rates and cheap houses. When we might be at the end of VHS tapes, right? The VHS tape salesperson was like, oh, these DVDs are just a pain in my butt, but they'll go away and VHS tapes will come back. And then the DVD companies were like, you know what? Man, DVDs are great. This streaming stuff is just a fad. I'm sure streaming will go away.
And then Blockbuster was out of business.
Exactly. So you got to ask yourself, is this just a cloudy day and rates will be low and houses will be cheap? Or are we in the new norm? Are we entering a new era? And we might be entering a new era. Housing might just cost more.
There's none of the experts are saying that home value is going to go down anytime soon.
Right. There's not enough of them.
No.
There's not enough of them.
Yeah. Supply and demand.
Yeah. So I think if you are ready to buy this year, go for it. If you want to buy, but you're like, you know what? I need to get my life in order. I don't think that that's terrible. And I don't even think that's that strange. Mm-hmm. I couldn't buy a house the first 2 times I tried. I had to pick up a side hustle. I had to pay down credit card and student loan debt. I had to work for it. And then I got myself in a position where I could do it. That's normal. It's not supposed to be, it's not supposed to be like, everyone hands you the keys to a new house anytime you ask. I mean, some things take work.
Right. Well, then you cherish it more too.
Yep.
Yeah. What should buyers be looking out for this fall?
I would say just know what's out there with your loan choices and your programs. There's a lot of down payment assistance out right now. If you listen to one of Beth's previous episodes.
Yeah, we had Heidi Welsh from state of Minnesota. She was great.
It's amazing. And I have my first loan right now where a client is getting $35,000 of first generation home buyer money.
That's so cool.
And you can pair it with other programs. You can sometimes
she talked
double
about
dip.
all the layering and bundling. And it's like, holy crap, you can get so much money from all these programs.
Yeah. And that program, there is a lot of funding for it. So it should be around for a while. But I could name dozens of programs that have been out and then have used up all the money,
right.
Lyft, Project Reinvest, Polad Foundation. There's been all these different nonprofits and foundations that have given money out that once the money's gone, it's gone, unless they get a new batch, right? Or the Family Housing Fund was amazing for duplex people. So you really got to pick your poison. You can say, oh, no. I choose to die on this hill. I'm drawing a line in the sand. I'm not buying a house unless rates are lower. Okay, great. But what if the down payment assistance programs are gone and the money's used up by the time the rate's lower?
Right.
Or you say, I don't care about rate. I want to get into a house with like only $1,000 out of my own pocket, which that's what it was for me. So in that case, then there's never been a better time.
Yes.
Or, hey, I want to be able to buy a house where I can get a thorough inspection and I want to be able to negotiate for a little bit of repairs. Okay, well then if that's your metric, then now is still a good time because if it's a little slower, especially it's going to be slow in the winter if rates don't drop, the winter is your best time to get negotiations going. You might not find out if you have any good grass in your yard or not.
You get some grass seed.
Yeah, exactly. But at least you can have typically more flexible sellers. So you got to find out what's important to you. And then once you narrow that down, then maybe it is a great time to buy. So I think moral of the story is do soul searching. Talk to Beth or one of the agents on her team. Talk to me or any other reputable lender.
I always say, I always want to connect clients with a good lender. Like, you need to have this conversation. Like, what if you've got some credit hiccups that you need to handle that you weren't even aware of? And if you can get your credit score up 20 points, all of a sudden you can get a better interest rate, which makes things more affordable. So like, you can never start that conversation too soon. I'm
glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that know they have good credit, but then they might not know the whole report. I had a client the other day. She's going to put 20% down on a single family house, right? So that's a strong client.
The dream client, yeah.
She had no idea she had a judgment against her.
Yeah. You want to fall in love with a house and figure that out?
Yeah. And then once I showed it to her, she's like, oh yeah, that's right. That bullshit. But she's like, wait, but I settled that. I paid it. And I was like, I know I believe you paid it. However, it's not showing as paid on the credit report.
Right. You got to hunt down some paperwork on that now.
So often. And so had she already found a house, I would have had to tell her to slam on the brakes and not make an offer.
Right.
That's a buzzkill.
1,000%. If you don't have that dialed in, sure enough, you're going to walk into an open house and the house of your dreams is going to be on the market. And then I'm going to call Connor, and then Connor's going to be like, nope, not happening.
Yeah. So, and I'm always going to say no, but
yeah,
I'm going to work on that. But another thing that you brought up is credit score. I'm going to take just a quick moment to get that news bulletin out there. I don't think people realize that last summer, the LLPAs, or loan level pricing adjustments, changed for all conventional loans with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They used to stop counting at 740. 740 and up was considered so perfect that we didn't even care anymore.
Right.
Like kicking a field goal. Once it's through those posts, doesn't matter how far the ball would or would not have gone. So now it's 780.
It's really hard to have a 780 score.
Yes.
It's really hard.
I had a 686 when I got my first home. So if you are already worried about interest rates, why are you using your credit card to buy lunch? Probably because of points, right? You're getting points or miles, which I'm trying to do too, even though apparently I'm a point hoarder and I didn't realize you should be using them on things.
We could have a whole nother conversation. We need to connect you with the pursuitofpoints.com friends, Alyssa and Jason, our friends. They'll get you to use your points.
Let's
strategically.
Do that. We should do a Hawaii
we'll do a happy
episode.
Hour.
We should do this podcast remote sometime.
Okay, there you go.
So if you are using your credit card for minimal expenses to get points, that's like the smart move, right? However, whenever we pull your credit, if it happens to have a balance, that can affect your score, even if you pay it in full every month. So if you've had credit cards for a while, I'm talking several years, and you're not trying to just use them to build your credit score up because you're new to having credit and you're trying to rebuild credit or something. If you've already had it for several years, you've already squeezed all of the activity sort of effect out of it, where you're boosting your score because you're showing that you're using it in a responsible manner. You've already got that on your side if you've had it for years. I would say if you're thinking of buying a home, stop using your credit cards for several months before you apply for pre-approval, because that could be the difference of you being 790 or 741. That could be the difference of you being a 705 or a 735. Because after 700, there's tiers like 720, 730, 740, 760,
and that'll
780.
all affect your pricing, right?
They're going to affect your pricing. Maybe it's not the end of the world, right? Maybe somebody would get a 6.75 rate and the other person would get 6.9. So again,
but it's all, every little dollar adds up. If you're already like, houses are so expensive, well, that's all going to factor in.
All did, sure, and it sure does when you're buying $500,000 or $1 million or 1.8. You know, so. I would say most people think I have good credit because I've never paid late. And they think simple as that, case closed.
Right.
Well, if you want to be proactive, if there's something you want to do, switch to using your debit card at least 3 months or longer before you get a pre-approval. I know you're missing out on points.
Yeah.
But just get all of your balances to zero and then just put them away in your underwear drawer or freeze them in a block of ice.
You're not tempted.
Shoot, I just gave away my location. I'm going to have to re-hide those in case anyone raids my house. So, that can really change your score because it's not just the interest rate, it's the PMI. PMI is also graded on
We
credit
talked about
score.
that. We had Kama here earlier. It was episode right before you. So Kama is our mortgage insurance expert.
Yeah,
so
she's
we
great.
had her on, and she's like, this is not a sexy subject. But she's like, it's all tiered. It's like they look at everything. They're looking at your loan to value. They're looking at your assets. They're looking at your credit. And that is going to affect your monthly mortgage insurance. And people don't even think about that.
Yeah, it's a game. And also, if you have student loans or a car loan, just let that ride. Those are installment loans. The software scoring models can see that that's going to end eventually. It's these credit cards that hurt you. The revolving debts or credit cards, they're really supposed to be a luxury. You're really supposed to not use them unless you absolutely need credit cards. They're supposed to be a safety net. However, because of the commercials and the consumerism and what's kind of preached at us, get the points, do this and that, get the perks, get into the secret lounge, we're told to use them for everything. But then the credit bureaus that do the scoring are going to say you're risky if you use them a lot. You must need them. You must not have anything in your checking. So let's go old school. Let's take a break from credit cards and use debit card leading up to a pre-approval so you can have the highest score possible. After you close and get your house, go ahead and run amok. use those credit cards like crazy, you're going to need to. You're going to be at Home Depot or Bed Bath & Beyond every weekend anyways, or Target.
Yeah.
And go nuts. You've got the keys to your house at that point. Now, let's say I'm talking to somebody out there who doesn't have their cards already at zero. I know that wasn't my story for most of my life. So if you're carrying large balances, you could reach out to somebody on Beth's team or myself. But there's some various credit unions that do debt consolidation loans. And be careful with that because there's also a lot of scummy, manipulative places that are offering you something similar, but it's not as good. You want a boring old normal debt consolidation loan from a credit union where what it is it's like a car loan. Mm-hmm. So just think of it as a car loan. It's an installment debt. Maybe it's $7,000, maybe it's $20,000, but they give you the check and then you can pay off all your credit cards. So you're just moving the revolving debt. You're moving all of your $10,000 or $20,000 of credit card balances. You're moving it to an installment loan. And just by doing that, all of your cards instantly show up as paid off. Don't close them though. That will hurt you. So you leave them as paid off. It looks like you just got another car loan.
Well, and you're probably going to have a better interest rate on that anyways too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. You're going to have a single digit rate.
Right.
Or something
instead
in the teens.
Of like a 24% on your credit card.
Yeah. And then they stretch it out over a 5-year term. So that also makes your minimum payments lower.
Yeah.
And then you can still get aggressive and pay it down. But at least suddenly your credit bureau looks like you have zero balance on credit cards and you just have 2 cars. That is a way better picture than having 4 credit cards maxed out.
Right.
So I've done this in my life twice. Why twice, you ask, Beth?
Yeah. Why twice, Connor?
Because after I paid off all these credit cards, I maxed them out again.
You hadn't learned your lesson yet?
I had to learn my lesson. Life happens. You got to pay rent. You got to fix your car. And that's what I did. But I certainly didn't go to the bar or take a trip with friends. So, you pay these cards off, but then you must hide them or freeze them or cut them up. Otherwise, you could use them again. Because remember, you're not closing the credit cards. You want that track record. You never want to close the credit cards. You want these freed up
trade lines. Yeah.
Yeah, never close them. The highest credit score I've ever seen was an 830. I've never even seen an 850. So I don't know.
Back in my mortgage days.
Really?
Yeah, we had a couple of clients that did. And I was like, oh my God, this is like the holy grail.
Oh, yeah. It's just for angels or robots. I've never seen an 850.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
So highest I've seen is 830, and that guy was 90. He wasn't wealthy. He was just in my office to co-sign for his granddaughter, and he just had us beat by another 40 years of credit history.
Yeah.
So never close a card if you can avoid it. Just keep them open, but try not to use them.
Yeah. All right, well, let's talk about what do you think is going to be the overall prediction for like the real estate market this fall, like leading up to the election? Like, what do you think? Like, what's in your crystal ball? What kind of insight?
I think things are going to really slow down November, October. I think people are very going to be fixated on uncertainty or who's going to be president. Personally, I don't see a lot changing. I don't see a lot changing between then and now. And also, I don't know if there's going to be a lot changing directly after the election either.
Right. It's so interesting. I'm like, who knows?
Yeah. I think the first rate cut is going to be ceremonial. It's not going to be massive. It's going to be...
They'll just throw us a bone. It'll be like what, an eighth or a quarter or something. You'll be like,
Correct.
I mean, they're like anticlimactic.
When your dog is whimpering for food the whole time you're eating, and you finally give them a little piece of your crust, that's what we're gonna get.
Which sucks, but it's better than nothing. I mean, because everybody's waiting for it.
Yes, and then I think next year will tell the tale of the interest rate battle.
Okay, we are in here podcast recording, and my cat, Birch, is on the floor sleeping. And she's like snoring. You can hear it. We're like, I see Ryan.
I was wondering what...
Like,
I kept looking over at Ryan. I thought it was him for a second.
No, she's legit on the floor snoring. I thought it was my stomach. You're like, what is that weird noise? No, my little 10-pound cat is like, she's like, It's so cute. Okay, let's get back to it. What impact... do you think, like, in either direction are like the interest rates? Like, how is this going to affect the economy?
Well, I think Americans have a short memory.
We do.
And there's so much pent-up demand.
Yeah.
I think the minute we get one interest rate cut, even though it's going to be ceremonial, it's going to give a lot of people an excuse to do something.
Right.
They're going to say, yeah, now I can buy that home. Now, rate cut. See, I'm no dummy. It's going to get them off. There's going to be this surge of demand. Have you ever seen when something goes on sale, but it isn't really that much cheaper? But
yeah, like shopping at Kohl's.
Hey, it's on sale.
Like that place where they like raise the price and then they tell you it's 50% off and you're like, this price should have been all along. You're
exactly.
like,
Or don't they don't some places do that before Black Friday as well?
I'm sure.
They're edging you. They're getting the price a little bit higher.
Yeah, and then they're like, it's all 40% off. And then you're like, wait a second. I just saw this online for cheaper. What's going on?
And that's when I get all 5 credit cards out and I go shopping.
And then you go crazy.
Yeah.
Go buy some more green pants.
Those bargains. So in any case, I think there's going to be a surge of transactions after the first rate cut, even if it's not much, because of the pent-up demand. And then I think if we get a rate cut in the first quarter, I think we're going to have a very busy real estate in 2025, because we're either going to get that rate cut that we want, or people are going to be sick of waiting, because all the sensible, quote unquote, people who have been sitting on the sidelines are finally just going to say, you know what?
We need to move. We can't wait anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And birth rates are still happening. The family unit is still intact. There's still a lot of millennials having kids, even though they're having them later in life. And so one of my financial planners tracks those data points, because while sort of lenders and realtors are more focused on what's going to happen in August, what's going to happen in September, a lot of these planners are saying what's going to happen in 2026, 2027, 2035. And he has a very longitudinal view. So he's saying, yeah, real estate isn't going anywhere, regardless of settlements, regardless of AI, because people are still having kids. Population isn't growing as rapidly, but it's still growing. And so do not expect a crash anytime soon.
No. I was also read some stats in the last couple of months when I was, doing homework for social media about all of like the boomers that are living in houses or staying in houses longer, but instead of like transitioning to assisted living or 55 plus neighborhoods. But like there's going to be a lot of houses for sale then, but they're not necessarily rebuying another house. So that's going to be an interesting nuance to see like all those houses hit the market and like, what's that going to do? I mean, it's not going to fix our inventory issue.
Right.
But it might be like that perfect 2-story house in a great school district that all of these move up buyers have been waiting to hit the market.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, when they buy a big house, they think, oh goody, this is the forever home. And the truth is, it's
you and I know it's not. You're like, that's going to be your 7 to 9 year house.
Yeah, it's the home until you can't do stairs.
Yeah.
And so I think you're going to see a lot of homes with stairs, or if they don't have a bedroom on the main level, those are the homes that the boomers have to leave. If it's a 1-level rambler, a boomer doesn't have to leave that home anytime soon, ever.
They can just get wheeled out.
Yeah. My dad had to sell his townhome because of the stairs. My mom doesn't like stairs either, knees can only take so many up and down. So eventually I won't be able to do stairs. And so I think that big wave of inventory is coming, as you said. I think you're right. Yeah,
but they like the article that I read was like, they're like, don't expect a tsunami. Like there's enough properties out there that could be a tsunami, but they're like, it's not going to flood the market like that. It's going to trickle the market. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, that's good, because I love those downsizers. There's like some of my favorite clients to work with. They're like, all right, you have 30 years of crap in your house. Well, yeah, we'll help you figure out how to get rid of all this and get on the market.
Yep.
It's one of my jams.
Mark's going to need a big downsizer.
Oh, jeez. My husband, Conor came over here and like saw our garage for the first time last week. And he's like, oh, wow. He's got a lot of hobbies. And I'm like, yeah, you think? Why am I parking in the driveway?
It's all cool stuff is the problem.
Well, that's what he said. He goes, it's not junk if it's cool. And I'm like,
correct.
Well, it's a matter of opinion.
Yeah, I'd say he's a collector,
oh my God.
Not a hoarder.
That's what he would say too. Oh my God. Well, so if you're a buyer or seller and you're thinking about making a move, like next 6 to 12 months, like what advice are you going to give someone? We talked about like me connecting, like any of our buyers with you to like start that conversation early. But like outside of that, like anything else that people should be doing?
I think people underestimate how fast it happens once it happens.
Yes.
Everyone expects it to be a slow burn because it's a big, scary topic and it's a lot of money and it's a big house and they don't own a house yet, or they own one, but this is only their second time. The truth is, once you find it, it's like a short fuse. And so people underestimate the things that they should have learned, could have done. Once they think there's going to be time, like when you find somebody you kind of like, you got to go on a bunch of dates before it gets serious. It's not that way in mortgage and real estate. It's the opposite. So I want to encourage people to get ready. Okay, we always do that. Everyone always encourages people to get ready. Mm-hmm. So what's the hang up there?
I talk about it all the time, and sometimes...
Why don't they do it?
I don't know.
I think it's because they think getting ready means they're doing it. They're like, getting ready means you're going to the dance, but that's not always true. No one on Beth's team has commission breath, and I pride myself in not being the pushy sales guy.
Not at all. I hate that. It's gross.
So I think people are avoiding learning and doing the steps because they think if they talk or engage with a lender and a realtor, that means they have to go through with it.
Right.
I mean, I'm always nervous about talking to the solicitor knocking on my front door because the more I talk, the more I'm like going to just sign
You're
up.
Like, oh crap, I'm buying it now.
Yeah, right? So I get that. But I think at this level of the game, there's no sales pressure. There's no pushiness from Beth or her team ever.
No, and I always say, like, I just started coming out and saying, like, in the middle of a listing or buying consultation, or I'm like, this is not about me. I'm not going anywhere. This is about you and the timing that works for you and your family.
Yes.
If it's the right time, great. If not, then we just need to like get these steps in place so when the right time happens, we are prepared and we're not scrambling. We can scramble as good as the next guy. Like we can scramble all day long. But if
we can't go back in time and educate though.
Well, and if I can position you to save money on the buy and make more money on the sell, why would we not do that? Like that's my job, is to be your education guru, all things real estate.
Yeah.
So if we can get a little runway here, it's great. Because before you know it, someone's going to walk into an open house and be like, oh my God, I found the house. And I'm like, well, great. You haven't done shit to empty your house out, and we got to sell your house too.
Right.
So we could have been proactive on this. And I always tell people, I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like if this is like a 2-year down the road thing, let's just get some runway going.
Yes. Use your runway. That's what people aren't doing. They're waiting for things to improve, and then they're just gonna...
And then they're gonna scramble.
They're gonna get off the couch and try to run a marathon without stretching.
Totally.
Use your runway to talk to a lender and a realtor, to educate yourself, even if you never pull the trigger, and just do it with the right team that doesn't give you the sales pressure, because learning this stuff doesn't mean you actually have to do it.
No, it's
but
just
you should
education.
At least know what it is. Somebody needs to give you the real estate birds and the bees talk before you actually try to go on a date.
Right. I 1,000%. So if you had a crystal ball, what would you see happening in the market in the next 3 to 5 years, Connor?
I would see prices remain here or go higher, because if rates go down, more people are buying. There's not enough houses for sale. We're just not going to see a $200,000 first-time home buyer home that doesn't need any work.
No, doesn't exist.
If you are wondering, hey, I'd like to own a house someday, but you're not there yet. I mean, I wasn't until I was 31, 32. So if you are thinking what the next 5 years is going to look like, control that spending. Say no to yourself on buying things. That delayed gratification is an actual wealth creation strategy, believe it or not. So try to limit spending. Even if you don't save a bunch, don't worry about the savings. I can always find you down payment money. So just reduce the spending. You don't have to eliminate it, but reduce spending. Make sure you are having discussions at your job with your boss and have he or she notice your hard work. Okay, you don't want everyone else to be getting raises while you're not. You don't want things in the market becoming more expensive while you're stagnant. So if you're not getting raises at your job, you better be learning a side hustle and improving your net worth that way. You got to be going up with the rest of these things. If you're static and the rest of the world's dynamic, then 3 to 5 years from now, you're going to be a little bit pissed off when you want to do something big. So as prices are going up, your value needs to be going up also. And that can be a combination. It can be reducing your spending, or it can be getting paid more at your job, or both, ideally. Then you're going to start going up exponentially. So prices are going to go up. Hopefully your income's going up. I don't see credit scores becoming even higher. I think it's been 740 was the threshold for like 50 years. Now it's 780. They're not going to bump it to 800 on anyone. I mean, this was a huge change. So don't worry about having to have even better credit. If you can get anywhere in the 700s, you're good.
You're winning.
Yeah, you're winning. And if you can not do the spending right before you're getting pre-approved, then you're gaming the system and sort of beating the system. And I would say just stay in touch with a realtor and lender, because sometimes these nonprofits and foundations have amazing programs and they have money to give out. They do not have money to advertise also. So there's money out there that you might not even know about.
Right.
And so many people are like, hey, we just got married and bought a car. Now we want to get pre-approved. And I'm like, shoot, you were under the income limit before you were married, and you qualified for more of a house before you had that big truck payment.
Yeah.
Had you done those things in reverse. So that's where I say, just talk to a lender, talk to a realtor. You don't need to apply online just to talk to someone. You don't need to send in your taxes just to talk to someone.
Right.
And maybe do things and that's where if you're talking to someone, you could find out, oh yeah, maybe we should do these things out of order.
Right.
Even though I would argue that's in order if we're trying to game the system.
Right.
So talk to a nerd, find a nerd like Beth, find a geek like me, and talk so that maybe you can readjust your strategy.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and like that's the common theme in this conversation is that who knows what's going to happen in the market? We don't know. We all wish we had a crystal ball. But like you can honestly never learn enough about the process, educate yourself enough, be armed with as much information so you feel really comfortable making a decision about, is it time to sell and then buy our next house? Is it time to buy my first house? Is it time to downsize and then move to a one level? Like, it doesn't matter what stage you're at in life. Like, you need as much information as possible to be able to make that decision and feel really comfortable with it. Because you and I aren't going to strong arm anybody into that. There's no way. That's not the reputation I have. I know that's not the reputation you have with your business. Like, I'm going to arm you with information. You make the decision, and then I'll help you make it happen.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to beat the market, they've got to time the market. To time the market, you've got to know what you're doing. So you need information no matter what, unless you're just dumb lucky with everything you do. There's
those people like that. No, I wouldn't describe myself as a lucky person. I think I create my own luck by just by working my ass off.
Yep.
Yeah. Generally just not handed to me.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Closing thoughts. What else do we need to know about the market right now?
I think just if you're fixated, remember, other than learning and information, remember to figure out what your pain point is. Is it payment? Is it rate? Is it amount down? And then instead of fixating on the problem, run another scenario. Okay, if everything was perfect, if I had my ideal scenario, what would that look like? Mm-hmm. And then compare the two. Right. I so often will compare the two for people, and we subtract the difference and we find out it's only $400 a month is the difference. And then they're like, I said, really? You're $400 a month? That's so easy to cut out of a spending budget. That's just a few less Instacarts or DoorDashes. And so...
Cut out the Starbucks.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy.
And so I think people are fixating on why something's bad, and they aren't taking the time to draw it up, get it on paper, get those estimates, then do a perfect scenario estimate, subtract the difference. You might not be as far away as you think you are.
I was at my eWomen Network, going to give them a shout out, my networking luncheon, monthly luncheon. And there's a financial planner gal. We just happened to be sitting at the same table, and she's really a great wealth of knowledge. And I just said, like, what's like the biggest thing like you see? And she goes, people always think that they're in a worse position than many times what they actually are. True. When they rip off the Band-Aid and have a conversation with me. And she's not one of those warm, fuzzy people. And sometimes people, I don't know, I think it's maybe that Minnesota nice where people need to feel like a big warm hug. She's like, I'm not like that. I'm going to say, like, what do we need to do from here until death? Like, how can we manage your cash flow from here until death? That is my goal. And I want you to not be strapped for money. And so she's like, it's just shocking how many people like delay that appointment with her. And then once they have it, they're so relieved and they're like, man, we should have done this so much sooner. But we thought it was going to be really terrible. And we thought you were going to tell us in a terrible position. She's like, no, you're in a much better position than what you thought. Because now she's armed them with information, just like what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I think the tough love is needed.
Yes.
I catch myself saying things my mother used to say more and more and more. And, you know, we have to understand that it's okay to do tough love and say, you don't get this unless you do that. You don't get reward unless you clean your room. You don't get the financial independence you want unless you buckle down now.
Yeah.
Because the alternative is just saying, no, you're fine still, and just kind of being an enabler. And then you're going to just drift along for a few more years. I'm not preaching no spending and this and that. I'm not preaching that as a lifestyle. I like fast cars and shiny things.
Right.
I'm preaching delayed gratification. I'm preaching buckle down now so you can have your cake and eat it too later. That's all I'm That's all I'm preaching. I'm not preaching have no fun ever. I'm just preaching put in the practice so you can win the big game.
Okay, so this is a perfect way for me to segue back to what I said at the beginning of the show. Check out episode 83 and 145, the other two episodes we had Conor on, because Conor has house hacked his way to his dream house on the lake. And that's not because he hasn't had a fun time between when he bought his first duplex and now buying the lake home. Like, he's lived plenty of life. He owns tons of doors, which is going to totally secure his retirement. And so check out those episodes. You're going to find tons of value in it. And real estate's a tool. It's a tool to create wealth. It's a tool to get you to financial freedom. Most people don't get rich on their jobs. They get rich investing in real estate.